What's up, YouTube? It's I with the boat, and I just got done with a rank grind session on my Twitch account. I was streaming this different take on Akuma. It is not Raging Demon. It is not a dual color deck. It is a deck that has been known for a little bit of a while. It didn't have a lot of highlight on it, and from what I know, there's only one top 100 player that actually plays this deck, and I was able to play against them. I copied the deck down from our matches. I played against them twice. And I also gave my own spin to it. I gave it a little bit of, that Iowa touch. I like to really put a lot of focus into decks I build. And this deck got me all the way up to 1950. That's top 225 for now. We will be continuing the grind later on, hopefully trying to get to that top 100. However, without further ado, let me introduce you to Action Tyrant. So here we have the deck list. This deck list has the Akuma, and it is not using Raging Demon, it is using Ashura Senku. Ashura Senku is an ability that it's actually a lot of text. It moves a friendly unit to a random open board slot. It grants Veil for 10 seconds, and it also grants immune to damage for 10 seconds. So it's not indestructible. It will still die to destroy effects. However, not being able to be targeted because of Veil, also not taking any damage for 10 seconds is really strong. And also, when it moves to a random board slot, it keeps its attack line progress. So if it was like 80% of the way dealing damage, it'll keep that 80% attack line. And that's very clutch. For this deck, I usually start, top to bottom, but this will be easier explained from, the core cards and then everything supporting it. So in this deck, you'll immediately notice that there's only 4 units in the deck. We have Tyrant as a 3 copy, we have Maruto Munto as a 1 copy, and Tyrant is one of the best cards in TEPPEN because it is a 2-for-1. You get 2 units out of 1. What's nice about this card is for reanimate decks, you get 2 units out of it. So when this card dies, you'll get a brand new unit. It's pretty much like added to the game state, and the original Tyrant goes to the grave. And that's really important that the original copy goes to the grave, just because we have Rebirth. Rebirth brings back the card, so that way, once we set it up, for playing 2 cards, we get 2 units, and they're very powerful. What's nice about this Tyrant is it turns into Super Tyrant, and you'll always hear this, Super Tyrant, Super Tyrant. Super Tyrant is a 2/8 with agility and combo, and look at that art. He's just, ready to wreck some faces. Having agility combo is very similar to like Heavenly Kick's Chun, and that's always been, a strong card. What's really nice is the 2/8 stat line. That's going to be relevant in a lot of our games. So we have the Tyrant. That's, obviously a lot of plays to make with Rebirth. We also have Maruto Munto. And what's funny is, if you've been watching me for a while now, a lot of players know that I've never really liked this card. But for this deck, I 100% like it in this deck. Maruto Munto as a 6-drop in this deck is a threat that just keeps on going, and the rest of the deck supports, Maruto Munto in the deck. That's why I enjoy it so much. The next key card is Bloodbath Frenzy. With this card and, Super Tyrant, we're able to use agility combo and the stat buff gainage. You'll get stats. And then on memory, once you fulfill the memory by playing, enough actions, you get the stat bonus, you get the immediate attack. So you get stat bonus, immediate attack, and you also have agility and combo. So what happens is the spillover damage that you get from Bloodbath Frenzy is doubled. So effectively, having a Super Tyrant middle lane, giving it agility combo and spillover. They keep the spillover, by the way, so it's not a one-off. You just keep the spillover until it dies or gets sealed. Having combo allows it to clear the enemy board and give you less problems to deal with. In addition, having Ashura Senku is our way of protecting our combo, because that is essentially what it is. It is Super Tyrant, it's Bloodbath Frenzy, and you protect that combo with Ashura Senku. Because with Veil, remember, your opponents cannot target the Super Tyrant during Ashura Senku, which will allow you to just kind of go ham, put out all that damage. Your opponent will not have a response. Let's go throughout the rest of the deck. We have damage buffs. We have, Forbidden Fruit. We have Psycho Power. But because we already have 3 Bloodbath Frenzy and, 1 Bolt Reaver's Valor, those are all of our damage buffs. We had to cut out some Psycho Powers. Originally I had 3, but I cut them out just because we already had so many damage buffs. Having too many could put you in like breaking situations, but this is what I feel the optimal amount. Forbidden Fruit is really strong against the red matchups, allowing you to protect your unit. Instead of your unit taking damage, it'll be you taking damage. But not only that, you get +3 attack with the Super Tyrant Agility combo. That's like 10 attacks, a 10 attack damage every time it's going through. Bolt Reaver, because we play so many actions, this is a game-ending card on its own. What else do we have? The Rebirth is really just for us to recycle the Tyrants. As soon as the original copy dies, and even though we get the new one, you're free to play, Rebirth. As soon as like that other card dies, this is on the field now. Play Rebirth. Another combo that a lot of players don't know about is False Throne. So False Throne is a card that sends one unit with the highest MP cost from your deck to the graveyard. So this gives us another way of getting Tyrant out quicker. Since we are a deck with only 4 units, that is essential to us not, losing pace in TEPPEN. TEPPEN being a fast game, you don't want to lose momentum. We have Black Crown's Madness. This card I haven't been using it as aggressive, but you're welcome to use it any way you want. I use it in pinches. If I'm in a pinch, I'll use this card and then gain some extra mana. But the reason why I wait till later on until I absolutely need this card is just because of us wanting to get to Living Death. Living Death is a very powerful card, and specifically in this deck, it could mean, just winning the game outright. So you never really want to use this card because it could really take away your Living Death. But also, having this card, sometimes you do have to use it. You have to use it because maybe you don't have another card in your hand that you can play. So there will be situations where you are forced to use it. We have 5 self-sacrifices in the deck. It's 2 Self-Predation and 3 Mad Massacre. 3 Mad Massacre allows us to kill our Tyrant, because there are going to be situations where we have to kill it. Obviously it's not going to kill itself. Your opponent, if they see the Super Tyrant, what they usually do is they just ignore it. They go away from it. That's why you need the self-sacrifice. And another really important thing I want to really nail on in Mad Massacre is that you really want to make sure that you use the self-sacrifices, kind of like in very opportune times. You want to make sure that at any time you have this card out on the field and you have one of these on the hand, you want to make sure that you use the card, because when you use it, it's the best time to use it in this deck. Because you would never really, kill your own Maruta Munto, right? And you would also never really kill your own Super Tyrant. The only time you would ever kill a unit is if it's this card specifically. So if you ever have this card out on the field, and you have one of these cards, the Mad Massacre or the Self-Predation, make sure you use them. Because if you don't use them, they stay stuck in your hand. You won't find another opportunity or chance to use them again, and they just stay there, giving you less cards to work with, and eventually breaking you and making you kind of like upset, right? This is a spicy card that I added for myself. It's called Death Executioner. So this card, given the situation that you play it in, the best time to play it in is if you have 14 or less cards in your deck. If you have 14 or less cards in your deck, this card will go off every time. Okay? And once it goes off, it'll give revenge to all of your units on the board. Other than that, if you use it before then, what'll happen is you mill 3 cards from your deck, but you don't get the revenge effect. The revenge effect only works when you have 14 or less cards left in your deck. But what I really like about this card is that you can use that anytime you want. You can use it to establish a late game, because sometimes we have to get to late game. And it really is a spirit breaker for your opponent for just 2 MP. Last but not least, we're going to go into the board wipes. So we have Living Death. I mentioned earlier, it's a card that makes it really game-ending for the opponent. It removes all units on the field, so you will not be seeing those cards on the field. Make sure that when you play this card, you do not have units on your side of the field, because the units on your side of the field, they will get removed and you will not be able to get them back on the field. That's why we have 5 different self-sacrifices, is so that we can use these in setup for Living Death, which will give us even more power, even more strength into the play. We have Cruel Game, which allows us to destroy units. The best time to use this is if you have no units on your field, but your opponent has like 1 or more. There are times where you will want to use this card, on just 1 unit, especially early game. I find it best to use this card early game, because if you just let it stick in your hand, it's gonna like clog up and you're gonna feel very awkward keeping it for the entire game. But it really depends on the situation. After playing so many TEPPEN games, you can figure out like, oh, maybe I should save my Cruel Games for this situation that seems to come up all the time. But in general, I feel like playing this card early is the best way. But you can play it later in the game as well, even if you open with it early. Rebel's Memories, because we play so many actions, this is a great card to just blow up the whole board. Not only does it kill your opponent's board, but it also kills your own. There have been times where I've had slow Tyrants on my field, and then I would just use Rebel Memories to like kill them all and then have 3 Super Tyrants. And that's the deck. Let's get into some gameplay. We are in the A rank. My phone was dying, so I wasn't able to play on my main account. But I feel like there's been a lot of A ranks getting to champion nowadays, so I'm sure we'll face against some champions. And you know what? A ranks are not even that bad themselves. I always have to play against A ranks on my main account anyways. So let's look at this hand. This hand is pretty decent. Already we have the 1 unit. That's what I'm okay with. As long as we have a unit, the worst thing that you could have happen to you in this deck is if you brick, right? But if you have a unit on the board, then that heightens your chances of not bricking, allowing you to play the game and just, ride it out. There are a lot of things that I'm missing from this hand, like that I would like to have, like self-sacrifice, for example, or Living Death. But just having this card right here makes me feel, safe. I will have to play it because I almost hit 10 mana. I like to save my mana. Ooh, this is really bad. Okay. So I need to make sure that I use this card right now. Because if Namiel takes damage and survives, what'll happen is the Tyrant will go back in the deck. And it looks like I can't stop it. It looks like I'll just have to take that. So I'm going to lose this Tyrant. It's going back into my deck. Unfortunately. I'm going to go ahead and use this because I will have to use my own mana anyways. Let's see if we can get this Psycho Power. If we get this Psycho Power, that's good. If we don't, I mean, we tried, If we get this Psycho Power, nice. So this will give me the ability to keep my my Tyrant. Because Namiel only works on a specific, threshold where it has to be 3 HP or less, which it almost was. But because of this, I'm able to keep my Tyrant and, be happy. I might have flubbed it up here, But I will use Black Crown's Madness because I've already used it once, so might as well keep going, right? But what's nice about this situation is that I have Veil. I'm going to let this attack line hit before I pop Mad Massacre. There we go. Now I'm going to use this. This is going to kill the Namiel. Alright, and I'm going to wait a bit. I'm going to wait because I think that if I play an action, I will be punished. You know, I haven't really seen them play that many cards. They played what? One Mitsune, they played one Namiel. Now what, right? And good thing I waited because they did have another card. They had the Brainwash. And that's okay. I think we can survive out of this. You know, we saved our mana, we waited. And we're just playing at very optimal patterns. So I'm going to drop this unit right then, because now he has the Rikoha. He almost killed the Super Tyrant for almost nothing. But by the way we played it, it's good. I want to use this now, because if he dies, then he has a chance of being rebirthed, and we don't want that. We don't want a Super Tyrant right now. Let's see if we can get a Ashura bottom. We didn't. We messed up. That's okay. I'm going to do this. So this will give us some blocks. I messed it up again. With the play. I could have had 3, but it's okay. Having 2 is fine. We probably want to do this. This will give me the option to have 2 units with Revenge. You know, we were talking about that earlier. Now I have 7 or less cards. And now these cards have Revenge. They went back in my deck. I'm happy. If I use the Revenge ability, this is a really good note to have. Is I never really want to use False Throne anymore because I have units in my deck and False Throne gets rid of them. So getting rid of your Revenge units that you just put in your deck is such a bad idea. Same thing with Black Crown's Madness. I don't want to use Black Crown's Madness. Actually, I will have to use one of them. Due to the situation right now. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to sacrifice this. Because, you know, removing cards in my deck when I have Revenge units in it is very not good situations. We're going to go ahead and do Bloodbath. This gives me an instant attack. We're going for 8 damage top. Because we're getting +2 stats. That gives us 4. And we have the combo. That's 8 damage top. Doesn't have a response, so they will be taking that full damage. We're going to go ahead and block with the Tyrant here. Yep, and that's an instant, well not instant, but it's a surrender. Games with this deck can get out of hand. It's definitely very fast, can put you in very high roll situations. If you want to check out some higher level gameplay, I did take out a lot of strong players in my stream on Twitch. So feel free to check out my Twitch. The title of my Twitch VOD is I Stole a Deck. Because I actually did steal a deck. I played against a top 100 player. I copied what they had and I made it into my own. Alright, this is a really weird hand. It can get bad if I lose the Tyrant too early. But because we have the Tyrant, we have the self-sacrifices, I think we should be fine. This is not good. They played a green unit. This means that I have to worry about seals. And that's fine. But that's where the self-sacrifices come in. Because with self-sacrifices, I can use them and then he'll try to seal. Because he's green. Okay, he didn't use a seal. But I will use the Mad Massacre to deal damage onto the bamboo dude. This way, you know, there's less damage for this Tyrant to chip down. Gonna watch this happen. Alright, so I'm gonna go aggressive because I have the setup. Usually I save it, but with his deck, you usually want to, you know, be very aggressive. Play very aggressive. So I'm going to use all of my Black Crown's Madness now. I want to finish him quickly. You know, I am scared of this matchup. This was a very lucky draw. We drew into the living death. I could do a lot of great plays here. I think I have 3 units. Okay. So, in that case, I think we do nothing. I think we're just going to living death him. You know, I will show you the power of that card. Once this unit dies, we will have the ability... I'm going to lose some mana here. I'm going to go ahead and kill my own unit. You know, we have the self-sacrifices. This is what I said. You want to make sure that you have your board cleared before you use Living Death. And I'm just going to kill it myself. Alright, he heals himself, but he has a full board. You know, he wasted all of his cards. What's funny about now is his deck, my opponent's deck, they also only have 4 units in the deck. It's 3 Bamboo Pandemoniums, and then it's 1 Sigma. So I'm removing his whole board. That means that he's losing 3 cards. I'm going to let this resolve. He's effectively just making sure he has a Bamboo in the grave, which is fine. I'm going to go ahead and Ashura bottom. This will allow me to protect my unit. I'm going to go ahead and just kill this card. I have the option to. What's nice is if they respawn, I can use Death Executioner and give all my units Revenge. Revenge giving me the ability to like play them again for cheaper. You know, it really pushes me further into late game, which is really nice. A lot of decks don't have this option. To make your late game cheaper, to give you more cards to use, it's great. I'm gonna let bottom hit one more time. We're gonna go in for 8 direct damage. This is an instant attack. We're getting buffs. You know, has combo, agility. I'm gonna go ahead and use Blackground's Madness because there are no revenge units in our deck. So using this card is okay. And then once these cards die, you know, I will draw them in my next hand. They're going to seal that card, but I'm going to go up at top. That'll give agility and flight to Maruto Munto, making him a threat. Bottom's already a threat. It's 411 stats. 411 stats is ridiculous. Alright, they remove the flight, but that's okay. It still has agility and its stats. I'm also going to Ashura mid to keep our unit alive. And like I said, see how the revenge came back? We have a 3-mana Tyrant. Isn't that busted? That was a giant killer challenge too, so we got 2 starts from that. That was a champion player. Alright, we'll play one more game to really show off this deck. I always like to give at least 3 games per video. 3 ranked matches.
I will teach you the meaning of pain. You're not in my database.
Again, we got the unit. It is a weird hand, but I'll keep it. You are going to have a lot of weird hands. It seems like it's really been generous to me. I'm going to be honest with you guys. There are going to be times where you draw very bad hands with this deck. It's not all the time, but there are going to be some situations. And sometimes you do have to have that mindset of how TEPPEN works for drawing and stuff. Just to get out of situations like that. Looks like we are challenging a Advanced Artifact X right away. I'm going to go ahead and start buffing our Maruto Munto. Yeah, this guy's using basic cards. So, they must be, you know, pretty fresh to the TEPPEN scene. But they're already in A or champion rank, right? That's okay, just don't panic. They are... I guess technically now we're doing more damage than they are. I'm gonna go ahead and use this. I'm gonna use that card because it's very not a good situation if we use any of the other cards. That X has a lot of health. There's not a whole lot I can do to it. Alright, we're in a good situation now. We can sacrifice here. We're playing a lot of actions. That gives me my 4th memory. So now I think I can challenge bottom lane.
Critical damage sustained.
Because now all I have to do is this.
Systems fully charged this power to end all conflict.
We'll go ahead and give him the damage buff here. Yeah, we're going to take out that X with our Tyrant.
Pure energy.
Looks like they're doing charge shot. That's fine. We're fine. And now we have the agility combo spillover. Because it's spillover, there's going to be damage that happens, you know, onto the layer. I'm going to use this opportunity to use rebirth and gain our 3rd unit. You know, just to really push our win further. See that? The layer took 7 and then it took 9. We set it up something pretty crazy. And that's the deck. This is the deck that I got to 1950 with. I think I can go higher. What's really crazy about this deck is just the potential to, you know, high roll. But high roll consistently. With that being said, let's get into some closing tips. Alright. So some closing tips. We already talked about at the beginning of the video that you always want to use these, you know, when you have the Super Tyrant out. But what I generally like to do when I'm waiting to use this is to make sure it's low health. But also, if it's low health, I'm not playing against a red player. Because red players, they always, you know, kill your card at times that you can't expect or respond to. Because they have on-play damage deal kind of things. You want to also make sure that you use it, like, if they're almost dying, but their attack line's almost finished, and the lane is open, your opponent can block with it, right? So you just want to make sure that you activate the self-sacrifice before the attack line finishes. It's just very important that you get those self-sacrifices off, just to get them out of your hand. Because you get, like, free abilities, right? Like, who wouldn't want to spend 1 mana just to gain 7 health? Who wouldn't want to spend 1 mana to deal 5. You have the resources. You have the mana. You have the unit that'll die for it. But you also get a new unit. It's just kind of like bread and butter. It's free. That being said, I didn't really get a lot of chances to use False Throne effectively. There was one game that I did. So False Throne, sometimes if you have False Throne and you also have Rebirth in hand, that's a good setup, because it means that you're guaranteed as a unit. False Throne plus Rebirth means that you effectively have a unit in hand. On all the 3 games that we played today, I always had a unit in hand, and sometimes you're not going to get into those situations. Sometimes you'll get the Rebirth, I mean the False Throne, and you have to play it off of Rebirth, which is a completely fine play. What'll happen is it'll either get us the Tyrant or it'll get us the Maruto Munto. You know, 3 out of 4 times you're going to get the Tyrant, because you have 3 copies out of 4. But if you don't have the False Throne, there are times where you can use, you know, Black Crown's Madness. You can use Death Executioner, just to really go throughout your deck, you know. And there are times where, you know, even these cards, the really expensive ones, can brick you. the Living Death is super important. If possible, try to save it as like, you know, when you have all the pieces. False Throne is another card that really helps Living Death, because False Throne puts units from your deck to the graveyard for 2 mana. And you're not going to find anything that's cheaper to do that. This is the only card that really pushes early Living Death really quickly. And we saw that in one of the games. You may have not have noticed it because, you know, a lot of players don't see this interaction. But I did use 1 False Throne and 1 Tyrant. 1 False Throne and 1 Tyrant means that I have 3 units in my grave, because I had this from my hand. So this gives me 2 units. Then I use a False Throne to give me another unit in the grave. Once I have 3 units in the grave, we pop Living Death. I have 3 units, my opponent removes all of their units, and we're in a good place. Just remember that if your opponent does have units in the grave, which usually, you know, half the times they do, half the times they don't, those units will come back as well. So just keep in mind like what cards your opponent has killed on their side of the field, because potentially you will be seeing them again with Living Death. But generally I do like to use an early Rebels Memories. I do like to use an early Cruel Game, but you can use them late game as well. But generally you want to use them early. Especially Cruel Game, because as you notice with this deck is a lot of the times when we're pushing forward, we're spiking, we're popping off, we're always going to have a unit on field, and Cruel Games is a card where you go only get max benefit is if you had no units. And there are going to be times where we have no units. I'm not saying those don't exist, but, you know, with caution. And I think that's it, you know. Really, the closing tips, all I did was just talk about how to get out of bricks and avoid them. The only thing else I would have left to say is just remember that Bloodbath Frenzy is crazy. You know, a lot of the times that I use this, my opponent didn't have a unit in front, so that became like 8 instant damage, also increasing the health and stats of Super Tyrant to ridiculous amounts. You know, if you have Veil on top of it, you know, what can they do? They can't target your card. They can't deal damage to your card. Well, thank you for watching. I hope this video, you know, helps somebody out there. And if you haven't already, please like and subscribe to the channel. And have a good one.